This is Billy Kingworthy. Today we're making venison tenderloin. Welcome to Billy Kingworthy. I'm Dennis, and today we're making venison tenderloin. This is a prize cut of meat for many hunters, and I'm going to show you a quick and easy way to prepare it. So we start with some venison tenderloin. This is a favorite cut of meat for many hunters, as I mentioned before. It's usually cooked in very short order. The proximity of this cut of meat to the rest of the organs is very close. It's on the inside of the body cavity. So a lot of times whenever you're field dressing the animal, some of the other body fluids might touch it, so you want to make sure you clean it up and usually cook it very quickly. I did a good job in field dressing this deer. I kept these cuts of meat really nice and clean, and I've set them up on a rack to dry out a little bit overnight in the fridge. And then we're going to prepare these today. I'm going to be using a little bit of the garlic olive oil that I got from the oilery in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. Thank you again for that. And then we're going to have a little bit of onion. We'll be using high heat and a wok to prepare these, and we'll be sauteing some onions to go with it. To begin with, we're going to take the tenderloin and cut it into very small medallions. We'll mix some of this garlic olive oil with it and then some of the seasoning that I've made before, and we'll let that rest while we prepare the onions, and then we'll get the wok going, and I'll show you the steps to do this. So we begin by just taking and cutting this into very thin medallions, maybe a ½ inch thick. So we've got our meat in the bowl. I'm going to take a little bit of this garlic olive oil, and I'm just going to drizzle it on top of the meat, and then I will stir this and mix it in. Before we mix this up, I'm going to throw in some of this homemade seasoning. I made a video on how I prepared the seasoning. If you want to check that out, I call it my world's greatest steak seasoning, but I use it for many other red meats. And that's what we're looking at, just to make sure everything gets coated with the seasoning and with the oil. And then we'll let this rest for a moment while I prepare the onions. To prepare the onions, I'm going to do a julienne cut. I like the strands to be long, and I think whenever it cooks down, it makes them sweeter. Start by cutting the ends off. As you'll notice when I'm cutting, I try to make sure I keep my fingers out of the way. I use the edge of the knife and my finger as a guide to cut. That way I can't cut myself. So I cut both ends off, then I'm going to half it. I'll peel the outside skin off down to the best looking layers of skin. All right, with our onions halved, so what I'll do is I'll start making cuts, and then I'll follow it right around, and I'll follow the rounded edge to try to make sure I get even cuts all the way through. Sometimes you flip it over like this and you start the other way. Now I want to just end up with longer strands just like this, kind of like what you would see in fajitas. And this is how we'll cook them down in the wok. All right, we have our meat prepared, we have our onions prepared. It's time to get the wok heated up. Let's move to the stove. So we've let our wok heat up a little bit. You can start to smell the heat, and that's how you know you're getting close. I'm going to take a little bit more of this olive oil and put right in the pan. And we're going to start by cooking our meat first. And as soon as I put that in, it starts to smoke. That's how I know it's really, really hot. I'm going to take and put the meat in immediately. That sound is what you want to hear. And we're going to cook this hot and fast. The other noise you might be hearing is my exhaust hood. I've got this vented to the outside so that none of the smoke fills up my house. I started this off on a medium-high heat. Now that I've got the meat in there, I'm going to kick it up to high. I want to cook this really hot and fast. Now the tenderloin's been cooking for a few minutes. It's starting to brown up nicely. There's a little bit of caramelization on the pan happening, but don't worry about that. The moisture in the onions, when we saute those down, is going to help bring that up. So I'm going to take the tenderloin off of the heat for a moment now that it's nice and brown, and then we'll add it back. Pan goes right back on the heat. I'm going to take and add our onions. Hit that up with a little bit more olive oil. So we'll let these onions start to cook down a little bit. I'm going to add a little bit more of our seasoning. And then I'm going to add a little bit of crushed red pepper flake to the recipe, just to spice it up a touch. You don't need too much. So I'll adjust the heat back down to a medium-high heat off of high. I think we've gotten enough of that burnt caramelization onto the pan. Now we'll work on seasoning it and bringing it off. Now that we've browned our onions and cooked them down a little bit, I'll add the meat right back in, and we'll finish the cooking process with the meat, and the juices from the meat will help flavor everything as well. I have turned the heat down just a little bit to finish the process so that I don't burn everything. Looks like we're just about done here. What I like to do at this point is take a little sample of the meat and see if it's seasoned enough. If it's not, you can add a little bit more seasoning. If you've got it just right, I like to pull it from the heat and then just let it rest for about 10 minutes before I eat it. And thank you for watching how I like to make venison tenderloin. You can use any type of seasoning you want. I like to use my homemade seasonings, of course. This is usually a breakfast item for the day after the hunt, kind of a reward for all the hard work that I've put in. I would like to say thank you for supporting my channel. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share. I would like to congratulate Tasha for winning our drawing. I'm looking to do another drawing here in the near future. I think I'm going to try to do something big for our 500th subscriber. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions or any thoughts, videos you want to see, or any comments, just drop them in the comments section below. Thanks for tuning in to Villa Kingworthy. I'm going to go have a snack.